Okay, now I have audio. All right. Well, this is already getting off to a great start. All right, we got Garth Beagle here already today. How's it going, Garth? Good to see you. I think my audio should be good now. Uh, Wave your hands around if there's an issue. Um, So today we're going to be talking about Macintosh SE power supplies. During my last stream, I was working on rebuilding a SE, and I basically said that SE power supplies are good, and you don't really have to worry about them too much. You do sometimes have to tweak them a little bit, but I think um, I showed in my thumbnail that I found SE power supply with some issues, and so here's a close up of some of the cap juice that was inside that power supply, and this one was really wet, and so it must have been a relatively fresh leak. Oh, I used the wrong picture here. Hold on one second. Let me grab the other picture. Um, Okay, there we go. And so you can see all the corrosion that happened along the metal there, and the board was actually wet with cap juice still. And normally, when you have a leaky cap board, whether it's a motherboard, analog board, or whatever power supply, you and you heat it up a little bit, you smell the fish juice. This one was so bad that you could actually smell the fish juice without having to heat it up at all. And so I cleaned this thing up before I started the stream. And one of the things you can see is how discolored it actually like bleached the board in certain places. You can see that there's the main sort of beige of the bakelite or fiberglass, whatever these things are made out of. And you can see it totally like bleached the board from all the cap juice, all leaked around there. And so, as I was just looking at this, I noticed that one of these resistors is actually screwed up. So I have a feeling, even after a recap, this one's not going to work until I figure out what that resistor is. The other thing I wanted to point out is that this is an Apple power supply. The other ones, and I went through and took every power supply out of every SE that I have here, and this is the only Apple power supply that I have in my batch, and so this one apparently, these Nichicons are apparently very leaky caps. One of them, you can still see it's very shiny. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna recap this thing and see if it heals it at all. The other thing to point out is the tops of these caps look perfect. There was nothing to really show on the top that there was a problem, but it was really all about what was going on underneath the cap and down on the board from the power supply. Um, so yeah, so far the only power supply that I've found leakage has been in the Apple power supply. The other ones have so far been good, but we're gonna take a closer look at some of them today. I want to power test them and see what's going on. So to help out with this, before I took it apart, I made this highly technical document of what caps go where on these things. I don't have a main cap to replace these, but this is going to help me recap this, and I'll post a link to this JPEG once I get done with today's stream. Okay, so let's start off with the 4700 microfarad in the top. snippers. And sorry, I'm wearing a glove here because I cut myself pretty good the other day. Um, it actually was the cause of one of the causes of me having to delay this stream. Um, I don't do well with a lot of blood, um, and this cut for some reason really got inside my brain. All right, so let's put this on here. So the spacing on these caps is a little bit was a little closer than the originals. The other thing I did was I went in and already scraped a lot of the corrosion off of this. There was corrosion all over. There was, you know, the leaky or the solder mask was starting to pull off of the board in a lot of places. So I went in and got rid of most of that. Okay, so again, get it soldered, and then I just push it up and make sure it's flat against the board. Okay, so now let's go on to these 470 microfarad 16 volts. There's a little cluster of them. So I have 470 microfarad 35 volts, so there might be some spacing issues that we run into here. And this board is nice. It has both the plus and the negative side marked. Very efficient. So I'm going to test the spacing here before I solder any of these. Yeah, it'll fit. It's not ideal that I'm using caps that are too big, but it should be okay. Oh. Got a little solder still covering that one. Hey Eric, how's it going? Good to see you. Make sure to check out both Eric and Garth Beagle, both doing streams these days. Eric was a huge help. I'm working on a little project to add internal SCSI to a Macintosh Plus, which normally doesn't have internal SCSI. Eric was a huge help in going through my board schematic and telling me what I screwed up on. I got my prototypes in for those boards. I'm very excited to give them a try soon. Sorry. Also, one of the other delays for doing the stream was my streaming PC died, and so luckily I had made a new one at one point, but I never quite finished it. I don't know if you can actually hear on my audio that everything's a little bit quieter than it normally is in here. That's because my old streaming PC was quite loud. Let's just check our solder joints real quick. Sometimes if the corrosion is bad enough, it kind of inhibits the solder from sticking to the board, but these all look good, so we're going to snip them. Wow, I've never seen a system where the caps were so gone that they actually were gone. That's kind of wild. Okay, I just want to double check my pluses and whatnot on here. Okay. Alright, so our next cap, we're going to do the 1000 microfarad 10 volt. Let's do the higher voltage ones first. So we got 1000 microfarad 16, 1000 microfarad 25. So what do I have here? So I have a 1000 microfarad 35. So that'll go where the 25 is supposed to go. So I'm gonna try to move through this pretty quickly, because Dave's Vintage Apple Tech is streaming this afternoon, and I want to get done before he goes live. Okay, so there's that one. Oh, gotta tighten that one up. There we go. And what do we got? 1016, 1016, and 1010. So what do I have here? So I have a bunch of 16s. Alright, so we're just going to put 16s in for all those. Hey, Adam's here now too. How's it going, Adam? Is it fixed yet? So, we'll find out very shortly here, I hope. I have a feeling that this is going to be a fail, this power supply repair, because I see a bad resistor. I think it looks pretty bad anyway. I don't know. I mean, I guess I could pop it off and functionally see if it's bad, but it's so screwed up that I can't even tell what its value is supposed to be. So I have a feeling that that is going to cause some issues. But we're also going to check out some other power supplies for SEs. So this one is an Apple branded power supply. All the other ones I have are either Ace Tech or Sony. And all the Sonys I've worked on so far have been good, but we'll check them out. I also want to show off a little way that makes it a little bit easier to test out a power supply in a SE. That's all good. I want to get this thing done before you all start streaming. You're streaming with Dave today, Adam? Okay. All right, let's check our solder joints real quick. I think we're good to go. Oh, geez. Um, I will not be going to any of the VCF events, although I, I was really wanting to go to the one in Jersey back in the spring because it's not too far of a drive, probably 4 hours or so for me. Um, but I'm not going to go to the Midwest one. That one's a little far away. Okay, so this power supply, you can kind of see it here. There's a little punched out groove that the board sits into, and then there's screws at various locations to hold the board in. So I think it's got 3 screws, yeah. Oops. Okay, here we go. And a Sante SCSI to Ethernet adapter and blue SCSI in the same system, Adam? Very cool. Oh, I love using old technology to do things it shouldn't do. I gotta figure out a way to do like internet connection sharing. I'm sure it's probably trivial to a lot of you. But I finally just got an Ethernet card for my LC3, and I got that thing running on the interwebs. So I'd like to figure out a way to use like the Apple Talk connection to share the internet connection. So I haven't even looked into it yet. Okay, so here we have this thing all back in, screwed in. We got our power leads. This one does have potentiometer to adjust the voltage. So we'll see if we need to play with that. Well, if it works at all. This system had a little heat transfer pad. Oh, I also forgot to mention that I cleaned up these cases, got rid of all that corrosion. So this, I have that little heat transfer pad back there, and then there's this clip that holds the FET up tight against the chassis. Tighten that. Just want to make sure my thermal pad is relatively in place. I can't turn that too much or it's going to move. Okay. It's got our FET pushed up against the side. Oh. Forgot to tighten that screw. So the Sonys let you adjust the potentiometer with this closed, and I have a feeling, based off of how this thing is set up, that we could probably do the same thing here. Let's see. So there was all kinds of corrosion inside here. Again, I do my sort of standard wire wheel. Well, first I cleaned it up with vinegar to get rid of any residual residual electrolyte, and then from there cleaned it up with the wire wheel to get rid of some of the corrosion that had built up. Okay, so this one is too big. Okay, before I close this up, I'm gonna actually put a little bit of deoxide on there so that it's a little easier to turn. This thing's kind of tight. Yeah. Okay. Leave those over there. Let's close this thing up. So I think these two went to the heat sink to help transfer heat a little bit to the power, to the chassis. Maybe ground it too a little. And then a couple of these. Okay, so let's get some of this stuff out of the way, and let's see if we make fire. So, I'm gonna zoom out. Okay, so what we have here is a working SE. So this was the one I was working on in my last stream, just to show you a couple things I did to it. I took the drives back out, and I took them apart and took this drive out, and then put a couple screws. There's a hole in the back for where the hard drive bracket sort of fits in when you have the other ones. The one where it's one floppy and one hard drive. So I took a couple of screws and ran them up vertically out of there, and put a nut on the screws, and then drilled holes in the blue SCSI so that it could slide down onto those, and then a nut and a washer to hold the blue SCSI down on there. So we have a dual floppy with a blue SCSI in it. I have the hard drive power cable, so that goes to this location on the board. So I have this plugged in right now just so that we can test the voltages. Hey, it's Justin D. Morgan. How's it going, Justin? So we have the hard drive power to test the voltages, and then I have in here it's kind of hard to show the internals of these things. I have a little extension cable. I have this is the real power cable coming out of the power supply that's in here, a Sony, and this one was in that last stream. And then, so I just have a little extension cable here, and I'll show the details of that later once we test these out. But what I'm going to do first is use a good Sony. So this is one that I'm pretty sure works. I don't know. I have so many floating around here that sometimes I forget which ones I've tested and which ones I have not tested. So I want to try this thing out with one that I know works first. Right now, oh, I'm looking for this. So we're gonna connect this thing up. Connect this up here. So we're just plugging in the power supply to this extension. Ideally, you should have a longer extension if you want to do this kind of thing. But this was one that I made out of a bad ATX extension cable. It was one that for some reason got corroded, but it works okay for this purpose. So I'm going to set this over here. I'm going to use some alligator clips to make sure we're getting good grounding. I'm going to use that just like there. Okay. And we'll turn on our power supply. Oh, EMI shields. They're always a fight, aren't they? I have a Commodore 64 that I've been wanting to take apart because this month is the 40th anniversary of the release of the Commodore 64, and I wanted to do something about that. I have a lot of videos I want to do. I have too many videos that I need to do. And it's always funny when you take apart a Commodore 64 and see what kind of EMI shield it has. Oh, do you see what I was just about to do that was kind of dumb? I was going to plug it in to this power supply that's in there, but that's not connected. I'm going to connect it up to the one that we have connected sort of crazy here. Okay, so I'm going to plug that in. So that is our 5 volt. Oh, it just fell off. Okay, so we're going to pop that on for there. All right. 3, 2, 1. Okay, yeah, so this is a good Sony power supply for one of these. And like I said, most of the Sonys that I'm on negative because I flipped these around the wrong way. Most of the Sonys that I've come across for these work fine. They might need a little bit of a tweaking for the voltage tuning, but for the most part they work fine. Alright, so this one you can see, yeah, and a lot of these times we get like a high voltage on the 12 volt. This is, there's two 12 volt rails, and this is the one that's supposed to go to the hard drive. So without the hard drive it's not loaded as much as it could be. Okay, so that's that one. And we are booted into Mac OS, and I just shut the computer off without shutting it down. I know that's it. It hurts my soul to do that, but we should be okay. Okay, so we're just gonna pull out this thing, take S off. Okay, so then let's try out this one that I don't have a ton of faith in, but we'll see what happens. It wouldn't be the first time I blew a breaker. So if the stream stops abruptly, it's most likely to me blowing a breaker. Okay, so we got our grounds hooked up. make sure we're off. All right, 3, 2, 1. Wow. Okay. We got bong. Screen's turning on. The voltage looks great. Wow. All right. So, this one is like dead on. That's about as good as SE power supplies get. All right. So, even though this one was bad to start off with, it's booting. Very cool. All right. I'm going to shut this down. Whew. Well, that's really exciting. I was expecting that thing to be straight up dead, but I do want to try to find a schematic for this thing and get a replacement resistor for that one that was bad in there. But that's encouraging that it came back to life like that. I don't know if you can see my writing on here. When I first tested this thing, it did not work at all. And then when I saw the cap juice coming out of it, that sort of explained to me why it wasn't working. All right, so let's try another Sony here. So, yes, another one saved. All right, so one thing I want to do real quick is show here what the insides of these Sonys look like. I think I might have shown that on the last stream. I don't remember. But we have a little bit of time here before the main show, Dave's show. Okay, so you can see that there's a hole in this power supply right here. The side off, and so there are 2 other screws on these things. You can leave them in place on the Sony, so you don't need to take them off. And that's just sort of, there's little hooks like this and go like that, and you slide that back and take that off. So hey, Steve, Mac84 is here. How's it going, Steve? So yeah, inside this power supply is a Phillips head potentiometer. And so this one lets you tweak your power supply. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this down this way. And let's see if we screw this thing up. So there's a hole here on the Sonys that's covered up by this thermal transfer pad. But when it's assembled, you can push this through there to get access to that potentiometer. I'm doing all right, Steve. I'm actually really sweaty right now. I had to shut the AC off to reduce background noise. But aside from that, I'm doing good. We just found out that our Apple branded SE power supply turned on after recapping and cleanup, and the voltage was dead on. Didn't have to do anything. Okay, so what I might have just done there was I turned it counterclockwise, and I think that probably screwed up the voltage a little bit. And it's going to be hard to show you what happens when you screw up the voltage on these things. With my camera configuration right now, there's too much on my bench, and this is all a little bit what would Dave Jones say, how you doing? It's all a bit how you doing with this little rig set up for testing power supplies externally. Come on, thing. Oh, my alignment is off. Gotta loosen that up. thumb's still not working 100% here. Let's get these things back together here. Let's see if we screwed this thing up sufficiently. Alright, again, we're going to just plug this into my little extension just for testing. Okay, that one's nice and tight. Just want to double check to make sure that my extension didn't get pulled out. That looks good. And let's check our voltage. Well, get ready to check our voltage. Attach our ground lead. Make sure we're switched off. Okay, so our 12, we got bong, so that means that it thinks this is good enough. It's 12.7 is a little high, but it should be okay. Yeah, we're at 4.67. So in my testing with these things, I've found that it's right around 4.6 where these power supplies stop working. So what I'm going to do is, see, I'm going to stick this screwdriver down into that hole. Probably not a good thing to do right after. You can actually do this while they're running if you're nuts. I would say don't take that as a suggestion, but I have done it. You can kind of see what you're doing. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so I felt the screwdriver get inside that potentiometer. I'm going to turn it left a little bit more. I'm going to leave it in there. All right, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so you can see I turned it more counterclockwise. All right, I'm going to move the camera here to try to show you what shows up on the screen. Oh, shit. 1 second here. Sorry about this. Shaky cam. So this is what low voltage looks like on these SEs when the power supply is not working as well as it should be. So we're going to shut that off. Turn this up. Going back clockwise. Oh, wrong power switch. I keep doing that. Okay, so you can see we're at 4.73 now, and the system bonged, so we're booting up fine. I'm gonna shut this off. Alright, I'm just gonna turn this ever so slightly. Alright, just going clockwise a little bit, bringing up that voltage up to the 5 volts. That's the nice thing about these Sonys, is that you can really fine tune them and get them really dead on, at least with the 5 volt line. And now you can see that brought down the 12.7 a little bit. So just wanted to show that how to tweak these Sonys. Um, I've had really good luck with the Sony power supplies. Like every one that I've pulled out, um, if it didn't boot up immediately, all it needed was a little bit of tweaking on that potentiometer, and then it was good to go. Um, so Sony's, yay. Um, but the Apple branded one, geez, that one was a mess. So then, aside from Sony and Apple, there are also, oh no, this was the Apple one that we just fixed, so that one's good to go. Goodbye, Apple. Let's see if we can get that. There we go. So you can see that part number on there if you're interested. And again, I'll post a link to that diagram that I made with all the replacement caps. So we went through the Apple, the Sony, and then this is an Ace Tech. I think there were a few different models of the Ace Techs from what I remember seeing on the web, and I'm going to post some more resources under this description here about different power supply resources for Mac SEs. I think there were versions of these that had reefa caps in them, and so looking down, normally you can spot a reefa cap pretty clearly, and I don't see any in this one. What else do we have here? So we have another Ace Tech. The topology of this one looks really similar. Oh. So you can kind of see through there. Normally, if you're going to have reefa caps in your power supply, it's going to be somewhere close to the power connector. But yeah, these all look, they might still be reefas, but they're not the polymer with the plastic shell that breaks. So I think these are likely okay. So let's see what happens with these. And I don't think that these are adjustable. If someone knows any different, please leave a comment and let me know. I haven't been able to find a potentiometer in these. But the other thing is they're not all corroded and nasty like that Apple one was. Like that one, you could tell from the outside that there was something wrong with that power supply. The other thing is you can't tell just by looking at the power switch, right? These are all Ace Techs. Some are black, some are beige. This particular system has some corrosion on it, but that's due to being stored in a wet basement. The whole chassis of this one was really gross. Okay, so let's check our voltages on this Ace Tech. Mac 2s and 2 SIs have Sony units. The SIs are all bad. Huh, that's interesting. Alright. Yeah, I have a Mac 2 and a Mac 2X that I would like to do work on. Well, I know they all need work. Hopefully I'll have some time to work on them at some point here. Okay, so let's try that one. 1206, 1211. 505. So that one's dead on. So this is when I, you know, this is the thing I go back and forth on with these all these old systems. It's like, it seems like the things that were built in the 80s, the power supplies and this, the systems, like the Plus and the SE and stuff. For the most part, the capacitors in those were really well made, and they haven't died for the most part. This one, I don't. What's the date? I don't see a date on the Apple one. 9044. Maybe that's 44th week. So this Apple one has a stamp on it that says 9044. So maybe it's 1990 44th week. It seems like as we moved into the 90s, quality on things went down. I don't see a date on this one. And the thing I worry about nowadays is with all these supply issues, the quality of the components might be pretty bad as things are getting shipped out. I follow a lot of things with like modern computers as well, and there are capacitors, SMT capacitors that are dying all over the place. I don't know if it's poor engineering or if the quality of these things coming out right now is bad because there's so much demand and it's harder to make things, so they're like rushing or something. So I worry about replacing all these caps with modern ones. If the quality of modern stuff, you probably won't know for another 5 to 10 years for some of these electrolytic caps, but these high quality 80s caps seem to be lasting forever. All right, so just wanted to show off. This is a little extension that I made for testing these power supplies. It would be nice if there were a clip on it, but this works good enough. It would be nice if it were longer too. Like if you have a real nice ATX extension to, really get out here, make these things easier. This was an ATX extension that was actually kind of screwed up, so I didn't mind sacrificing it. But I don't want to like sack one of my good ones. But they're regular old ATX cables, so you can do with them what you want. And so this one is a little bit narrower, and this is just for the power supply connectors. You can also make slightly wider ones, and let's see if I have a board here. So like the classic and classic 2s, you can use regular ATX extensions to play with these boards outside of the systems, and really you don't have to screw up your extension at all. I have a lot of stuff on the big bed bench here. Okay, you don't even have to trim if you're just playing with the motherboards. You don't have to do anything to your extension. Just leave your ATX extension as an ATX extension, and then it's an easy way to work on these outside of the system. But unfortunately, the SE power supplies are narrower than the SE and classic motherboard logic board connections, and so you can't use the same extension for both of them. And really the way that this thing fits down in there, it helps if this gets cut narrower. It's just a lot easier to fit down inside the chassis like that. Okay, this is another thing I want to work on. Anyone know what's missing right there, and also right there? Future stuff for the channel. Okay, so we went through a few power supplies, and I don't think we need to test some more of these. Um, so the sort of take home message from this. Let me change up my camera view. Let's see how sweaty I am. It's getting kind of hot in the workshop right now. So sort of the take home message here is that if you have an Apple one, you definitely need to redo the caps. I think I actually got a message on Facebook from Thomas Andrews saying that he also noticed bad problems with the Apple units. But all these Ace Techs and the Sonys that I've taken apart, you can see down inside these things, and they all look really nice. So I have a feeling that most of the stuff that was made in the 80s, this actually, you can't really see it here, but there's a stamp on the motherboard that says 1986. It seems like most of the stuff from the 80s works really well. And when we started hitting the 90s, that's when things started getting real bad. So obviously, the real take-home message is don't believe anything I say. Look with your own eyes, test your own stuff, really check and see what's going on. Don't assume that everything's going to be perfect just because it's a Sony or an Ace Tech, but definitely be a little bit more cautious. I was just sort of nonchalant about all these SE power supplies, and I was wrong. So definitely be more careful. So anyway, I'm gonna end this stream because there's another big stream coming on very shortly. So I want to thank Steve Mac 84. I want to thank Adam from Adam's Apples, Justin D Morgan from Justin D Morgan's channel. Who else was here? Eric Helgeson of Blue Scuzzy fame, who also has a channel, and Garth Beagle was here. I want to thank you all for stopping by today. And if this is your first time happening across one of my streams, definitely get subscribed. I don't know if you can see it right here. Yeah, you can see it. That's a Macintosh LC3, and I'm calling that LC3 the Farmer's Tan LC3 for some of the coloration that it has. And I'm going to be giving that LC3 away. So get subscribed, check in for future information about how I'm going to be doing that giveaway. It's to celebrate getting 128 subscribers to the channel, and I want to thank everyone that's gotten subscribed. So yeah, have a good one, everyone, and I'll see you over at Dave's stream.